We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Scott Lee Peterson, guilty of the crime of murder of Lacey Denise Peterson.
Scott Peterson was found guilty of double murder and sentenced to death 13 years ago. His family began the long process of trying to get him a new trial.
I think our goal also is justice for Lacey and Connor. I mean, we have an unsolved crime. Everybody thinks it's solved. It's not solved.
My daughter presented this morning. She's 8 months pregnant.
Lacey Peterson was 8 months pregnant when she disappeared from Modesto on Christmas Eve 2002. Police would spend the first hours searching for Lacey near the Petersons' homes. Lacey's story touched people around the world. Hundreds of volunteers helped search for the mother-to-be they didn't know but had fallen in love with.
We want her to come home and her poor baby.
After initial searches turned up nothing, fear set in. Lacey's family believed she'd been kidnapped while walking the dog.
Please bring our daughter home.
Police, on the other hand, immediately focused in on Scott, in part because of the way he was acting the night Lacey was reported missing.
When did you realize you were going to go fishing?
That was a morning decision.
Over the next few days, while investigators searched the home and seemed to be focused on Scott, Lacey's family came to his defense.
We love Scott. He loves Lacey. They love each other.
There's no evidence whatsoever that would point to him. They're way off base, and anyone assuming that.
But a few weeks later, everything would change. Peterson, it turned out, had a girlfriend named Amber Fry.
Scott told me he was not married. We did have a romantic relationship.
Before going public, Amber Fry worked with police, recording more than 12 hours of phone conversations with Scott Peterson. On New Year's Eve, just before a vigil for Lacey, Scott was on the phone with Amber, pretending he was in Paris.
Amber, are you there? Yes, are you having a good time? I'm near the Eiffel Tower.
The tapes would prove pivotal at trial. Michael Belmessieri was juror number 4.
He wasn't in Paris. He was very casually speaking to his lover on a phone while they're looking for his wife.
It took jurors 8 days to reach a guilty verdict.
But justice was served.
We'd be very surprised if Scott's conviction was not overturned.
The main reason is that there was never any forensic evidence tying Scott to the murders.
There's no scratches, there's no fiber evidence, there's no DNA, there's no blood evidence, there's no murder weapon, there's nothing. There's nothing that ties Scott to this crime.
The night before she disappeared, Lacey talked with her mother by phone at 8:30. Prosecutors believed she and her baby were killed sometime later that night or the next morning. They believe Scott then transported her body in the back of this pickup truck to his warehouse, where he had an office and storage shed. They believe he moved Lacey's body into this 14-foot fishing boat, which he then drove to the Berkeley Marina to dump his wife and son in the San Francisco Bay. But even prosecutors admit they're not exactly sure how he did it.
I've never seen a case where the prosecutor couldn't prove how it happened, where it happened, or when it happened.
He does not have time to do what he's convicted of doing.
The evidence shows that at 8:40, the morning Lacey was reported missing, someone was online at the Peterson home shopping for women's clothing and a sunflower umbrella stand. Lacey had a sunflower tattoo on her ankle. Then at 10:30, Scott logged onto his warehouse computer for 26 minutes, sending a holiday greeting email to his boss and looking up how to assemble a woodworking tool he'd recently purchased.
At the time, according to the state, Scott has killed his wife earlier that morning, and she's in the truck outside on a public street. And he's inside on the internet looking about how to build a woodworking tool and sending holiday greetings. That's a psychopath.
People that think that Scott is just a psychopath that is taking you and the rest of the family for a distorted ride by not admitting guilt, but he is guilty, what do you say to them?
I guess I would circle back and ask him what piece of evidence makes you think he's guilty. And I'd want to, be specific.
Clearly, the most damning evidence is the fact that Lacey and Connor's bodies washed up where Scott says he was fishing.
That is the probable cause that got him arrested, but that's not sufficient when his alibi was so widely publicized immediately.
Of course it's incriminating. Everyone in the world knew where Scott was. So anyone who had Lacey or had killed Lacey knew exactly where to put it.
Scott's attorneys and family believe he was convicted in large part because of his affair with Amber Fry and the audio recordings played for the jury.
How did you grapple with that, not knowing how he did it?
I don't know how he did it. I just know he did it.
How?
My belief is, a typical soft kill, that's, strangulation or smothering in the home.
Wouldn't that leave evidence?
No. The fact that nobody can tell you exactly how he did it is not nearly as important as the fact that they can tell you that based on all the evidence and testimony that he did do it. If you think Scott Peterson ought to be released, if you think Scott Peterson is innocent, you're wrong. He should not be released, and he is not innocent.
And a big thanks to KTVU for their help in providing all that video for us. And of course, in that package, you saw Ted Rollins, who looked, I don't know, did he look a year or so younger there? Let's bring Ted Rollins in. Ted, great to see you tonight.
Good to see you. I was working for KTVU a couple years ago when I did that piece, and it held up because nothing has really happened until now. His appeal is going to be heard, the oral argument set for next Tuesday in front of the California Supreme Court. They're going to do it via Zoom. There'll be some justices there. The attorneys will all be at home, and some of the justices will be at home on their computers. But this is what the Peterson family has been waiting for 15 years. They now have an audience in front of the Supreme Court for his appeal.
All right. Well, what is there? I mean, you know the case, and I covered the trial, but I mean, you know the case better than anyone other than the attorneys who tried the case. Okay, Ted. So where do you see the best opportunities for them on this appeal? What are the big issues that you think they're going to dive into and have a chance here?
Yeah, and keep in mind, this is an appeal. They also have a habeas file, which is where you can go after everything. You can bring in new evidence. An appeal, you have to be laser focused on the trial and say, this went wrong, or the judge made this bad decision. Where they're going to go with it is a couple different things. Dog evidence, dog scent evidence. It was allowed in by Judge DeLucchi. Basically, they are saying that the dog handler, the dog was inconsistent, never should have been allowed in. Another thing they're going to talk about is the change of venue, that the defense wanted a change of venue after voir dire had started up in Redwood City in the Bay Area, where you and I first met, Vinny, during this trial. They said that this was a horrible decision to have the case there because the San Francisco Bay Area was basically in the same television market of where the crime occurred. And there was the percentages were through the roof of jurors that knew about the case and had already made up their mind. The appeal, of course, is a long shot. They all are. But the Petersons are confident they have a chance here. Cliff Gardner, the attorney representing Scott Peterson, is a wizard. And he truly believes that they have a legitimate shot.
All right. And can we just argue for 1 second? I mean, what is the explanation for the one big like it's a circumstantial case with one big circumstance? Before Connor and Lacey are found, he has an alibi. I was fishing at San Francisco Bay, which is nowhere near Modesto, not a place where you would go fishing in your little dinghy, okay? Then that ends up being the crime scene. What are the odds? I mean, come on. He has placed himself at the crime scene. What is the possible innocent explanation for that?
Well, the argument is that everybody knew it because this case had so much coverage that if you had kidnapped or killed Lacey Peterson, all you had to do was read one newspaper or turn on the TV and you would know exactly where Scott Peterson was at the time of her abduction and murder. So you're going to, of course, get rid of her body, even move the body if you had to, and throw it in the San Francisco Bay. That's the defense argument. They say it doesn't take a brain surgeon to know where to dump the body if someone else actually had killed her because of the amount of coverage on this case.
Okay, so it's a combination. Someone else did it and framed Scott Peterson.
Well, okay. Yeah. If you believe that he didn't do it, then someone else had to have done it.
Right.